Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman. Guys, today's show is going to be exciting. I'm so pumped up. My brother Leo is going to be dropping some serious knowledge. We're going to be ruffling a few feathers, I think, here and then. We're going to be talking about how to reprogram your mind, reprogram your life, using something called autobiographical feedback. I know it sounds complicated, but he's going to break it down Barney style. He's done a lot. He's actually healed himself from cancer. He's doing a lot of great things. He's a serial entrepreneur, changing the world, living in a beautiful Dominican Republic. Leo, welcome to the show, my brother. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it big time.
Oh, man, I'm so excited to have you. And the reason why I wanted to have you come on, about a year ago, I decided I wanted to learn more about the brain. So I hopped back and started, reading stuff by Andrew Carnegie and, stuff like that. And I'm realizing the brain hasn't really changed much in the last 120 years, but it hasn't really been explored much in the last 120 years. So we're going to talk about that today. So my first question is, the only question I always ask is, what is your definition of resiliency?
Well, I think it's like, the Batman opening scene when they show the young boy fall down on the ground. His father looks at him and he says, "Son, you know why we fall down?" And he looks up and he says, "To learn how to get back up, Dad." So I would say my definition of resiliency, that and taking risks, being open to taking risks and having thick enough scar tissue from past falls to not be so concerned about taking future risks, because to me, risk is equivalent to your comfort zone. The bigger risks, there's measurable risks, there's actual risks, there's perceived risks. So understanding the difference between those three, and then logically and emotionally with some intelligence moving forward into the unknown and going for things. That's where the fruit is at the end of the tree, at the end of the limb.
Okay, so now if somebody would see you now, they see you being successful, you're happy, you're smiling. I looked out your window, you got a beautiful view, but they wouldn't realize all the shit that you had to go through to become the man you are today. So please tell us a little bit about where you come from, where you grew up, and how'd you become the man that you are today?
All right. Well, definitely has a lot to do with resiliency. I can tell you that, my man. So, being a middle-class white male, I don't have much room to complain, but my childhood was still a little bit difficult because my mother and father ended up hooking up one time and getting together when they weren't together, really. And so my mother got impregnated. My father was not super interested in being a father at the time. My mother wasn't interested in being a single mother at the time. So I kind of came into this world not really wanting a whole heck of a lot, and made it a little bit tough. My stepfather stepped into the scene, did the best that he could. My mother did the best that she could as well, but I never really fit in with the family unit. So I left home at an early age. I left home at 15 years old, became a criminal, and was pretty successful at that. And, having a criminal life blended with a felony before I was age 18, being a strip dancer, dropping out of school, selling drugs, doing drugs, stealing boats, cars, planes, you name it. And then getting cancer by age 25 was like, wow, that's a lot to deal with for 25 years old, At the same time, though, I was president of my class in my freshman and sophomore year. So it's not like I was sitting around doing nothing with no friends, no intelligence. I think I was a little bit outside of the box. Nowadays, if I knew that I was a Sigma male back then, it would have made it easier, because now I understand what a Sigma male is, and I understand why I'm a little bit different than the average bear. So it's easier to deal with myself. But anyway, so overcoming that junk, being 25 years old and having that history at such a young age is a lot of programming. So to have to rewrite that, to create a new version of myself, to create a new identity, and move forward in a way that was actually being an asset to society instead of a liability, was some work.
All right. So now I'm writing stuff down because I have a traumatic brain injury. So if I don't write them down, I'm going to forget. So something you said earlier, you, like me and you, I think we grew up kind of the same way. We both were male strippers at one time in our lives. We both grew up in unconventional households. And for me, because I grew up in an abused household, my solace was reading. My solace was books. My solace was learning. What were your solaces at a young age?
Being a rebel, feeling free. I wasn't allowed to have a radio. My family was very right-wing Christian, and they thought that music was, not the best thing in the world. And I had a very restrictive lifestyle, so I would sneak out of my house. I remember I would get a tape cassette, and I would leave it hidden out by the TV so I could record the beginning of TV shows like Knight Rider and Little House on the Prairie so I could have some music to listen to. Then I would hide that underneath my pillow the next day and just listen to that at night. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. But those were the coping mechanisms that I had, were to, learn how to be sneaky and get what I wanted, have my own freedom, even though I felt like a very restricted lifestyle.
All right. So now something else you mentioned, you hear the term alpha male all the time. Everybody I hear is an alpha male. What's a sigma male?
Sigma male has the attributes of an alpha male. We don't want to lead. We'd rather help other people become leaders. We don't like looking at small details all that much. We're not interested in gossip and small talk and things like that. We're more interested in a big picture. We like to solve big problems. We like to focus on the larger values of life, not so much the minutia. So at times I can come across as maybe being very arrogant because I don't want to participate in a lot of small talk and things like that. But it's not an arrogance. It's just a natural boredom. I didn't choose to be bored talking about the weather or, what's going on with a football team or, the politics at the local school or anything like that. And again, it also puts me in a spot where I'm not really even interested in national politics that much unless there's something major happening. I'm not really interested in what's going on in the global geopolitical, military, banking stuff unless there's something really big going on, because I only notice the big turning points. So if it's just some small adjustment by the Fed or someone's got an issue with the current president, I really honestly don't care. I don't care. But when someone like, I'll give you a real example though, when someone like Ron Paul, who met my personal values when it came to a political stance, ran for president in 2008, I got really interested. And I volunteered to be on his team of bodyguards. I had a little bit of a history of doing that as with Nelson Mandela and Vandava Shiva and some other people in the past. And then I got asked for state senate. And going from someone who wasn't involved with politics at all, then having my pattern interrupted by someone who, in my opinion, was really holding a very tight line in many ways to, like Thomas Jefferson, minus the slaves, inspired me. I saw a chance for a big change politically, so I got involved. But when I saw how corrupt the system was, and I got to see it firsthand, I immediately got uninvolved and didn't look back.
All right. So, and I love that. We're definitely gonna hop in and talk about that because I think me and you agree on a lot of stuff politically. But now, at 25 years old, for me, I never planned to live to age 21. I figure I'm gonna be an addict. I'm gonna die an addict. So I never had any plans for life. But what is it like at the age of 25 getting a cancer diagnosis when you've been on your own, you've been crushing it, you've been so headstrong and doing what you want to do? All of a sudden now the big C word comes. What is that day like, and what was your thought process when you first heard the news? I don't know if did I freeze or not? Because you're frozen. I don't know what happened. Maybe lost signal. But guys, this is an amazing conversation. And I can't wait to hop on and start talking a little bit more about the geopolitical stuff, especially what's going on in this country today. Leo, are you there, brother? All right. Well, guys, we're going to try to get him back on. I think we got something, got connected for a second, but we'll get back on. Technical difficulties, no big deal. But guys, just imagine he's healthy, a stripper at one point, so he had to be in shape, living the life, living the fast and the furious life. And then all of a sudden, at the age of 25, being diagnosed with cancer. Now, a lot of us, especially veterans, first responders, a lot of us, because of stuff that happened, whether we were overseas or coming back, a lot of us, and I've known a lot of my friends, have died from brain cancer, lung cancer because of the fire pits that they had over there, and different ailments. And now I think with this whole the water treatment plants, a lot of us are dealing with this stuff. Maybe not at 25, but sometimes a little bit older. And a lot of times we don't know how to deal with this stuff. And I think this is a great way to, we're going to talk about how he actually healed himself from cancer. Now, I think, of course, for me, I know the mind can do so many things. The mind controls the body. And I believe that you can heal yourself, especially if you start thinking right, if you start thinking healthy, which in turn, you're going to start eating healthier. You're going to start doing other things. Hold on. I'm going to try to get him back, guys. I'm going to try to get him back. Hold on one second. Don't go anywhere. Because I've become a big studier of Napoleon Hill, Andrew Carnegie, NLP, which is neuro linguist programming of your brain. I believe in what Ed Milet, Tony Robbins talk about how to change your mind. And once you change, you can learn how to reprogram your mind. You can actually learn how to reprogram your body. Now, what are some of the ways of reprogramming your body? Changing your habits, changing what you do every day. I just did a podcast yesterday. I'm sure you guys seen the episode that I dropped yesterday, and we were talking about how to either change a habit, a good habit, or to drop a bad habit. So say if you are a person that has, comes down with diabetes, like me, I decided with my group, as you guys know, they're my group, the Phoenix Club, and they're a men's mastermind. And hold on, we're getting back. Here we are. I got you back.
Sorry about that.
No, bro, it's all good. So I don't know if the last thing I asked you is, what is it like? You've been a stripper in the past, so obviously you had to be in shape. You lived your life fast and furious. What is it like getting that diagnosis at the age of 25? What was that day like? What was that mindset like?
Well, so my primary male role model was my grandfather, and he had told me at a very young age, because I mentioned that I left home when I was 15 years old, He would get me out of jail because my parents wouldn't. He would bring food to wherever I was staying, whether it was on the streets at a friend's or whatever. And he always made me promise him. He said, hey, don't let me die in a hospital or a nursing home or something, man. If I'm about ready to pass away, take me out in the woods, let me die along the trail like an Indian with some respect or something. So he was always preaching that he didn't trust doctors. They were practicing medicine, so on and so forth. So when I got my diagnosis, because I was playing basketball one time down in Southern California, Mission Beach, shooting some hoop. All of a sudden my back started to hurt. I was like, what the heck's going on? I went in and got diagnosed, and I literally walked out of the hospital, gave God the middle finger, and said, fuck it. I'm going to go steal a Ferrari. I knew where one was at. I knew where the keys were at. I was going to rob a bank, and I was going to drive down to Mexico with guns blaring, and just figured that when I passed away, I passed away. But I wasn't going to be, going in and getting an operation on myself at that young age. Why? Well, because I felt like I really fought back a lot. From 15 leaving home, over the last 10 years, I had opened 6 restaurants in Southern California. I'd worked for the largest over-the-counter brokerage firm in the country, and I'd opened my first business and was in the process of building it to sell it. So I thought I was super successful in doing the right stuff, and I overcame all these obstacles. But in reality, what I didn't deal with was the internal pain and the deeper hurt that was inside of me. I was trying to cover with superficial, quote unquote, success.
So what kind of cancer were you diagnosed with?
I don't even know. I never went back. He said I had a tumor the size of a softball in between my lower lumbar and my sacrum, pressing down on my sciatic nerve, and that's where I was getting the pain from. He said, you need to come back and get this sucker cut out. And I just never came back.
So then, I was talking to the crowd before you came back on. I believe that wherever your mind goes, that's where your body's going to follow.
Uh-huh.
And, even like for me, I'm a diabetic. But once I decided that, I'm going to eat healthier, exercise, and not eat junk food anymore, my blood sugar dropped by like 150 points just because my mind said, all right, enough of the bullshit. And then my body started to change. You can't change from the body to the mind, but you have to start with the mind first and then to the body, right?
Well, you can do both. As an example, this is one of my favorite subjects, by the way, too, amongst maybe 20 other subjects, but one of my favorite. So I ended up not stealing the Ferrari, first of all, and driving down to Mexico and robbing the bank and all that, because I had a friend of mine talk me into stop doing cocaine, stop smoking cigarettes, stop sitting around every night eating a pizza and watching Michael Jordan and on my gigantic screen TV that was bigger than most sports bars at the time. He said, why don't you get some exercise, clean yourself out a little bit, go for a couple of runs. And he talked me into going and doing some psychedelics, which to me was like, well, are you crazy? I was like, I don't want to do any psychedelics. That's crazy stuff. He's like, dude, you've smoked crack, do cocaine, all these things. Is like mushrooms is like a vitamin compared to that stuff. So I eventually I believed him and said, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I gave myself a couple of weeks to cleanse out, went out, had my psychedelic experience, had a near-death experience during it. And that's what woke me up to the mind-body connection. And I realized that the external world is a reflection of our internal dialogue, but at the same time, it mirrors both directions. So one of the things that I did to assist in my cancer cure was moving into a dojo as an Ushideshi. I was a live-in student because I understood I wanted to get my fighting cells inside of my body to be fighting a little harder. So I said, well, if I'm training all the time externally, my body mind is going to be thinking about fighting, which will get my body to start fighting. Now, you're also right. It does go both ways. So as an example, like if we have the thought, I'm thirsty, that's because there's a messenger molecule that's constantly flowing through our bodies called angiotensin 2. It's checking in with all of our cells saying, you guys dehydrated? You dehydrated? You guys dehydrated? And when enough of those cells say, yes, I'm dehydrated, then I have the conscious thought, I'm thirsty. So we do have this conversation going on inside that promotes an exterior experience, but we also have the exterior experience affecting the internal dialogue. And that's because we live in a self-reflective universe. And I think one of the biggest challenges facing everything today, humanity in general, how we look at politics, education, medicine, everything, is that we don't really see ourselves in relationship to the world around us in the way it really is. See ourselves as completely separate from it. And we don't realize that everything is reflective in nature, even though we've had people like Jung and Freud and every quantum physicist and neuroscientist for over 100 years tell us that it's a dance between the two. When we have these thoughts probabilities amplify in the quantum realm, then we notice those probabilities that amplified because of our thoughts in a part of our brain called the reticular activation system, and that creates the bridge between the two. And we can actually have a much bigger impact over the outside world and the inside world by controlling the direction of our thoughts and the quality of our emotions. And that's what I'm all about. Not talking about it, because the information's out there. Anybody will tell you, oh yeah, control your thoughts and emotions, control your mind. Bullshit. I don't believe a single person out there. I've never seen it, except for what I'm doing. And I don't mean to be tooting my own horn, but I know for a fact, having shared the stage with people like the Tony Robbins Foundation and Deepak Chopra and many, many other people. In fact, just in the last few months, I went and saw Dr. Joe, I went and saw Greg Braden, I went and saw Dr. Bruce Lipton, I went and did a Tony Robbins event. No one's doing anything close to actually implementing this information in a way that leverages applied neuroplasticity so that you can rewrite the programming inside of your brain, which then creates the feedback mechanism that you're thinking about. Because the average person has about 6,000 thoughts a day. They used to say 60,000, but it's actually closer to 6,000 based on studies done in 2020 at Queenstown University. And those 6,000 thoughts a day are about 250 an hour, about 4 per minute, ranging between 10 and 20 seconds each. So it is possible to use applied neuroplasticity through language, because we're always talking to ourselves. So what I did is I created a new language. That's the autobiographical feedback. And this language is based on ancient technologies and new breakthroughs in applied neuroplasticity, epigenetics, cellular regeneration, aspects of longevity. And it's a very hardwired, very solid, boots on the ground, legitimate science, not just saying like, close your eyes and visualize it. Who can do that all day long? It's not realistic. And we also know based on cellular regeneration that if we want to change our thoughts, we have to create a critical mass of new thoughts. So that's about 20% of new thoughts per day. For an average about 6 to 9 months, based on how quickly our GI tract and our stomach lining replace cells inside, how fast the replaceable cells inside of the brain replace, how fast the cells around the heart replace, because our brain, GI tract, stomach lining, and heart are the primary motivators for our thoughts and emotions in conjunction with our endocrine system. So we got to look at how long does it take to replace those cells. We take a look at the work of Dr. Candace Pert, Dr. Bruce Lipton. We know 6 to 9 months to do that. Social engineering happens the same way too. You ever notice we get fed a story over and over and over and over for like 6 to 9 months, and all of a sudden like, Epstein's gone, stop talking about it, moving on to something else. It's like, whoa, where'd that go? So that's how we're engineered, and we can engineer ourselves in the same way to create a healing response on demand, to move ourselves towards longevity on demand, to be able to reprogram and follow the clues that are left behind by successful people in every area of life. It's just a matter of mapping out that internal neural fabric repetitively, at least 2.5 to 3 hours a day. And it's not because you're sitting there doing it. I created a system where that's around you all the time. So it's just automatically all day long. Your pattern's interrupted with a story you designed for yourself, coming from your potential, coming from your future, having nothing to do with your past, unless there's aspects of your past you want to keep throwing into your future. Because basically our life is empty and meaningless except for the meaning we give to it. Most of us are giving the meaning of our past to our present and future. Most people also would like to interrupt that past bullshit and create something a little more epic to move towards. So,
all right, because I want to dig a lot deeper into this, I want to thank our sponsors. As you guys know, without my friends and my family, this show would not be in the top 1% of all podcasts in the world. And the reason for that is my friend has a company, and as my brother Leo knows, your phone can get hacked easily. Your computer can get hacked so easily. The company Indy's IT department actually keeps my phones and my computers from getting hacked. So guys, if you were really interested in making sure you don't get hacked and your personal data does not go somewhere on the other side of the world, check out indiesitdepartment.com. Ask for Daniel. He's my brother, so I love him. Also, guys, if you want to start your own podcast and have your own podcast seen in all the world, in the top 5% of all podcasts worldwide. Check out ericalanmedia.com. He's the one that taught me. So I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. So if you guys want to start your own show, check out ericalanmedia.com. All right, brother. So let's talk, because I'm a big Ed Milet guy. I'm a big Tony guy. And I love how they talk about the reticular activating system. And a lot of people don't even know what the hell we're talking about. But for me, I noticed my mental health got a lot clearer when I went on a news diet and I stopped watching news January 1st of 2023. So like you said, we were talking earlier, if it's a major thing, I'll find out about it because my wife will tell me. Other than that, I don't know if it happened. It's not in my little world. Because, I believe in, like Tony talks about, Ed talks about, is that what you search for, you're going to find. Whether that's health or whether that's being unhealthy. If you're always looking for people that had cancer, you're always seeing people that have heart problems, you start digging into it, it's going to get into your mind, and eventually you're going to be heading down that road. So talk to us about the RAS and what you're doing with the neuralistic reprogramming.
Yeah, so basically the reticular activation system tunes into things that we care about. So if we care about our car and we drive a red Tesla, we're going to see red Teslas everywhere. Those probabilities are going to be amplifying in our field of awareness all the time. If we care about red Teslas, we'll be sitting in a restaurant and maybe there's 10 different tables sitting around us jabbling around about stuff. And if someone mentions Tesla, we're going to be like, what? Huh? What? We're going to hear that pop right up because we have a cluster of nerves that have become associated to that theme. And we can program it to be whatever we want. And that's the cool thing about it. So if we want to embed into our consciousness something that a doctor from Harvard Medical School did, her name is Ellen Langer. She took a group of people about 100 years old, put them into an environment that reminded them of when they were in their 20s. Well, within a couple of months, their visual and hearing thresholds began to reverse. Their skin elasticity began to tighten. Their bone density increased. Why? Because they were remembering what it was like to have experiences when they're 20 years old. So then their growth hormones, growth factors, stem cell production, all of that stuff began to bump back to that place. Well, I can create external anchors in my language of autobiographical feedback that reminds me of vibrant times when I was in my 20s, and my reticular activation system will tune into that and begin creating that response for myself so I can leverage information, actually implement it into my life so that I can do more than masturbate my ego about how much I know. I can actually say, hey, let's use this stuff.
So what do you mean by...
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
What do you mean by anchors?
So as I mentioned, I created this language called autobiographical feedback. Autobiographical feedback is a language encoded into external anchors. What it does is it goes back and takes some of the most powerful technology from the ancient world, from the mystery schools, from Greece, from Egypt, things that Leonardo da Vinci had studied, things that Plato had studied, Aristotle had studied, all of the great leaders from antiquity. They learned a language called gematria. In fact, our Old Testament is written in gematria. The Torah is written in gematria. The Kabbalah is written in gematria. And what that does is take phonetic values and applies them to numeric values. So I said, hey, when I had cancer, I said, I can't possibly study all this stuff that Tony's talking about, Deepak's talking about, Carolyn Mace's talking about, Bruce Lipton's talking about, and do all these exercises every day. I need to make an automatic system for this. So I decided to create that language that did what? Interrupted my pattern all the time. Because it was localized to numbers, to images, to declarations, affirmations, new rules, new beliefs, emotional responses. It began to wire my brain totally differently because I was linking it to number, signs, and symbols. And now I've got a very complex, very fun, very easy to learn language that anybody can adopt into their life. And in fact, the people going through my program right now are like mind blown how quickly, because we don't want things in life, we want feelings. And certainly we're going to keep pursuing things, but we really want the feelings we think those things will give us. So to give people access to those feelings super quickly and for them to understand that the mechanics of consciousness functions in a way in which they can get those things quicker by doing certain processes, and now they know they're automatically doing those processes and seeing things manifest for them faster, is pretty freaking cool. So it's a way to train the reticular activation system to see this language. If we create an epic story, if we don't have an epic story that we're creating coming from the future, then we're probably not going to notice any of those pattern interruptions because our goals are impotent. But if we create some really cool stuff and begin to move towards that, then we're going to be seeing those markers for it and the clues around it all of the time in our life. And that's pretty awesome. It's very liberating.
Now, I'm a ninth grade dropout, never finished high school, but I've read over 6,000 books because I love learning, and I soak up knowledge. I think I got 15 books going right now. But
Wow.
One book that really changed my thought process was, I think it was called From Homeless to Billionaire. And the gentleman was talking about, how we talk to ourselves, the words we use, the I ams. So like a lot of times if I hear somebody, a lot of times I thought, well, so many people in my family died from cancer, say. I would think that thought, but now, because I've been doing this so long, it automatically comes back to the I ams. I am healthy. I am happy. I am wealthy. I am whole. I am helping millions of people. So, I believe in that once you change your thought processes, that even sometimes when negative things come into your mind, if you do it long enough, it's going to nip it in the bud quick. So talk to us about how we talk to ourselves. Because I think we listen to so much of what other people say about us, but it's really what we say about us that really matters.
Sure. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's how we talk to ourselves. So my series, it's a 3-part series. It's called The Language of Enlightenment. People are finishing their last day of the series, of the second series, on Friday. Today is Wednesday. So they got 2 more days. And when they jump into the next series, one of the things they're going to have right off the bat is I am statements everywhere. They're never going to have to sit there and be like, I am beautiful, I am healthy, I am loved, I am successful, I am abundant, I am pure, I am powerful, I am joyous, I am magnificent, I am a warrior, I am a samurai. They're not going to have to do that ever, because everywhere they go, they're going to see that. Very big difference. If you know Tony Robbins' work, it has to do with, a lot of it has to do with the human needs. We need to have certainty. We need to have uncertainty. Those two are like twins' wings on our body for keeping us motivated and moving towards something. If you are saying to yourself, or if you put flyers around your house or signs that say, I am beautiful, I am love, I am this, after a while, you go numb to it because you see the same stuff all the time. You got too much certainty. But if you're driving down the road and a car pulls in front of you and it says, I am love, I am healthy, I am abundant, I am pure, I am powerful, I am kind, courageous, compassionate. All of these things, or you walk into a store, or you open up a menu, or you look at your phone, or you look at the date, and you have all of these numbers, signs, and symbols that are interrupting your pattern, not because you were looking for it, it's just right in your face. So that's a key thing. And this also relates to like triggers. So anybody married has got triggers, right? Anybody who talks to someone about politics, they got triggers. You can literally reprogram yourself so that you don't have triggers nearly as powerful as you did before, not because you're working on it consciously, because it's reprogramming those triggers when they're not coming up, when you're not expecting it. It's like, oh, I choose love, and now I see myself with my partner, and my partner is saying something that would normally drive me nuts, but I'm choosing to be the person who married her, which is someone who's going to be there through good times and bad, someone who's kind, someone who's patient, someone who's loyal to her process. So when those events happen in real time, I've already been conditioned to be able to react in a different way. So there's a whole bunch of ways to use neuro-linguistic programming, timeline therapy, psycholinguistics, neuroassociative conditioning. Many technologies can be woven into this feedback mechanism, this language. And honestly, consciousness is born from language. It's the only thing that creates consciousness. Our consciousness is born from the conversation we have with ourselves. And to try to change the conversation I have with myself without actually rewriting the neural networks inside of my brain, to fire and wire, having 74 as I am abundant, I am pure, I am powerful. Having 78 is I am courageous, I am kind, I am compassionate. Having 71 be I'm a samurai. 75, I'm a warrior. 73, I am a champion. 73, I am joyous. 79, I am free. And those are all real anchors that anybody can use, and they'll know why they're being used once they learn how the language works. But you'll see 70s everywhere where you never saw them before, because all of a sudden it means something to you now. Just like 80s will mean something, 90s will mean something. I mean, who doesn't want a 90 be financially literate, 91 financially secure, 92 financially independent, all the way up to 99 financially free, right? But then you got to have your 81, your exit strategy to get there, right? You got to have your 18, your sale goals to get to your exit strategy to get to your 90 to 91 to 99. Now, this all sounds complicated, but it's not. It's super easy. It's as easy as singing Row, Row, Row Your Boat. In fact, that's how people learn the program. There's goofy songs and goofy rhymes and things like that. And also they're like, wow, shit, I know a whole new language. It's everywhere around me. And I don't need to go become a neuro-linguistic practitioner or a master practitioner or any of this stuff, because I'm learning how to use these technologies embedded into this language. It's really liberating, extremely liberating. It goes from the information age to the implementation age. A Sigma male is not interested in information. We don't care about information. We want to implement it. And unless it's making something big, we ain't doing it. We're not wasting our time. You know, I can go on YouTube and learn any of this shit about the reticular activation system or how consciousness is born or what makes me think I'm thirsty or whatever. Why would I go out there and do the same thing everyone else is doing? I ain't doing that. I'm not going to waste anybody else's time either. And there's a bazillion coaches and seminar leaders and trainers and people who are selling information in a 10-day workshop where their physiologically state changes because they're in an environment to create that change. And then people go home and go back to normal again within a couple of weeks. And I don't want to be part of any of that crap. It does create change in people's lives, but I'm for long-lasting change. I don't want to use short-term, quick, feel-good, motivational stuff without a long-term effect. So that's what I'm all about, and that's how it works.
Now, I love that. And now, a lot of people can't stand Grant Cardone. I used to hate the man's guts until I listened to an interview and realizing where he came from, growing up an addict, how he changed his life. So I picked up his book, 10X. The book was okay, but the one thing I got out of it was once you realize that everything is your fault from this point on, and you take ownership of all your losses, all your wins, and once you start realizing that, okay, nobody's coming to save my ass, I have to do the inner work in order to change my life. That really changed my life to make me thinking that, you know, taking ownership of your life is so important. Because if you're a business owner and you don't, even the Bible says, if you're a business owner and you don't know what your inventory is, you're going out of business. So talk about, you know, having to get real with yourself while you're doing all this stuff. Because if you're not being real, this stuff is not going to help whatsoever.
Sure. Well, like I said, I'm not the guy that's going to deal with the symptoms. I'm here to deal with the cause. So I am a cause for everything. I'm a self-referring cybernetic feedback loop living in a non-localized reflective reality. So everything that's happening around me is because of me. It's all because of me. It's my story. Every single intersection of a thought, every single intersection of an emotion, every single intersection of a decision, a habit, a behavior is an opportunity for me to make an evolutionary choice or to head down a path of entropy, which is a steady degeneration of a system or body. I live by this. This is what I teach. How could I not take responsibility for that when this is exactly what I'm teaching all the time? So I'm also blessed that right across the way here, right there, I have on the third story, the personal assistant of a guy named Werner Erhard. On the first story, down on the first floor down below, was one of the members of Werner Erhard's team. Now, I'm so blessed to have these knuckleheads next to me because Werner Erhard created Landmark Education. And so these two folks, their whole life was about, we live in language and we're meaning-making machines and we have to be at cause for everything in our life. Because we're either going to be right about something or we're going to be connected to the truth. And what do you want to be, right or connected to the truth? You are at the cause of everything that's going on in your life, and you live in language and you're a meaning-making machine. You have no meaning at all in your life, except for the meaning you give to it at all. So my whole community around me is also that way. I couldn't get away with for a second to try to blame someone else about anything going on for me. Just wouldn't work. And that's a big part of our language also, is that reality is made in agreement. So if you surround yourself with schmucks that are victims and always saying, woe is me, then that's going to be, based on the law of resonance, a part of your own attributes and way of being and perceiving the world. But if you're constantly surrounding yourself with people who are not going to let you get away with that type of stuff, and who are always making a stand for being a cause for what's going on in your life, then when you wake up until you go to bed at the end of the day, you got to realize, like, hey, even if I get in a car wreck, I chose to drive the car. I chose to go left or right. Ultimately, I had something to do with what's going on, you know.
All right, so guys, if you're listening to this and if you get triggered very easily, just hang up right now, because we're going to be talking about some stuff. Now, of course, I'm retired military, 23 years, and I know the system is broke. I know how the government system is broke. So we're going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. So like I said, we're going to ruffle little feathers. So if you guys get easily triggered, you guys can check out the next show, because this is going to be, we're going to get kind of deep in the woods for a minute. So talk to us about how, especially now you're living somewhere else, and you're seeing from afar about how our system is really broken here in the States.
Oh, man. I thought we only had like 90 minutes, and we're probably like at least like an hour into this, right?
At least a good 20 minutes that we can go.
Okay, well, that's not really much, but all right. So to begin with, our country is a joke. It's a joke. The fact that people walk around and say we live in the freest nation in the world is just a joke. The reason I'm living in the Dominican Republic is because I gotta be free. I'm so free here. There's so many things I can do here legally that I can't do there. And believe me, man, I made a best effort. I trained the Navy's Leadership Academy for 5 years. I ran for state senate. I worked in the largest over-the-counter brokerage firm. Our founding fathers, they wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution mainly for 3 reasons: liberty, security, and finance. They said we needed to have a financial system that had an asset behind it. That's why they left Great Britain to begin with, because there was no asset. They were using a fractionalized monetary system. They were totally down with the Iroquois Confederacy's a way of running itself based on a kind of a constitutional republic lifestyle. Same with ancient Greece and the theory of John Locke's liberty. Okay, so that was covering the liberty aspect of it. And then security was, hey, we're not going to go out and do preemptive strikes in other countries. We're only going to defend ourselves and watch what's going on within our country and try to protect ourselves from that type of corruption. And other than that, we're going to stick to our own borders. So it's an absolute lie. It's so hypocritical. I mean, who wants to celebrate Independence Day when we're the most dependent nation on the frickin' planet? I mean, we can't even buy fireworks unless we go buy them illegally from the Native Americans, in which we stole the land from. It's so hypocritical. It's just a joke. And there's a bazillion other things we can look at with that too. But our financial system, we went off the gold standard. It's totally manipulated markets. We're giving away money to bankers and to elite groups and so forth. We don't care about the average person. We have congressmen that every 2 years they give themselves a pay raise. It's an absolute mess, total mess. If we go back to ancient Rome, our founding fathers were all members of something called the Council of Cincinnatus. Hardly anybody knows about Cincinnatus, but he was actually the first Roman emperor. That's my youngest son's name, by the way, is Cincinnatus. And Cincinnatus was this very truthfully reluctant politician. He served as in the military, he served in the Senate, he served in banking. And when he retired, he went out to his farm. He started to say, you know what, I'm going to go chill now. Well, Rome was falling apart. They went out to go visit him. And they said, hey, you're the only person who knows something about all this stuff that everybody trusts. Before we all kill each other and steal everything from each other, we need you to come back in and be emperor. He's like, are you kidding me? Like, I've been serving the Republic my whole life. Why would I want to come in and be emperor? And they said, well, because we need someone to take control of this mess. So he came in, he did that within 18 weeks. He was done. He went back to his farm. So our whole termed presidency was based on this, like, oh, no, I don't want to be president. No, I don't want to be president. I'm reluctant. I don't want to do it. And I'll only do it for a short term. We got nothing like that right now. And the way the Constitution was designed is that the individual had the most weight. So if we think of a pyramid, right now we got the president on top, his weight's bearing down on the three branches, that weight bears down on the states, that weight bears down on the counties, the precincts, and then the individual. But if you flip it upside down, it's supposed to be the people across the top, the weight bearing down on the precincts, down on the counties, down on the districts, down on the states, down on the Fed, and finally the president's at the bottom. And all they should be able to do is like, hey, has Congress ratified a war? If so, then I'm going to be the commander in chief. If they haven't, I got nothing to do except for sit back and veto something that might cross my desk. But now all of a sudden we're giving all this power to this schmuck that's not supposed to have any power. So we're so lost. We're so lost. When I ran for state senate, people were like, what do you believe? I'm like, who cares what I believe? What do you want? If what you want, we can get a collective of people to say they want the same thing, then I'm bound to write legislation to pass that for you. If it filters through our state and federal constitution, sure. But what I want has got nothing to do with it. Like, wake up already, folks. Like, there's so many things we could do to take our power back individually and respectively as communities that we're not doing because we're so brainwashed. They've taken civics out of our curriculum for our education, and we're just, we're a mess, man. We're a mess. I'm going to tell you something else too. My 4th year of leading the Navy's Leadership Academy, they came to me and said, hey, yo, do me a favor, like, can you ease up on talking about the constitutional responsibility and legality of going to war and this whole like ratified by Congress thing before we go to war? And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, well, like, keep telling everybody we haven't, ratified a war for like 60 years and all of our wars are illegal, immoral, and unconstitutional. I'm like, yeah. Can you stop teaching that stuff? Okay. Next year I came back, taught it harder, and they kicked me out. I'm like, great, perfect. I'm not going to compromise my values. Same thing with the prison system. When I worked for the CDC, literally took me out for lunch and said, yo, stop teaching these prisoners this number thing. They're getting a little bit excited and stuff like that. And truth be told, this is kind of a revolving door. We want them to kind of, keep coming back and making some money off this. It's like prison for profit. You ever heard that thing? So once you calm down a little bit and, just do your thing, you'll get your paycheck. I was like, okay. Came back, boom, taught it harder, got kicked out. Perfect. I'd rather do that. So finally I said, fuck it. I'm leaving the United States. I'm going to go someplace where I can make a difference. And I'll tell you, I was here in February of 2020, right before COVID hit. I ended up flying to Egypt, wanted to go check out the Great Pyramid. Then I flew back to the States. I sat in something called a Vipassana, 10 days of silence. Highly recommended for anybody who's got any illness whatsoever. It's amazing. Vipassana, check it out. The moment we got out of Vipassana, we were allowed to talk. And they came to us and they said, hey, by the way, a global pandemic's hit. They're closing down all the airports. If you need to get somewhere, go there fast. And I was like, geez Louise, should I go back to Seattle and continue with my business, or should I fly back to the Dominican where it's safe? So I immediately went to the airport and flew back to the Dominican. Within 2-3 weeks, we created an NGO and we started feeding 10,000 people, and we fed them for 9 months. Now, in the United States, people were fighting over toilet paper. What a joke. What a joke. And after leading hundreds of challenge courses for churches and schools and the military and law enforcement, et cetera, seeing how if we were playing a little game and somebody got the ball, the other team or the other half of their platoon would beat each other's throats. Like, our culture is like whack. It's whack. So I felt safer being here, working with a community of people. We don't have racism down here. We got people from every country in the world. There's like 90% black people, and no one's like, it's a black person. And no one's like, it's a white person. There's none of that type of stuff. It's like we're human beings. We're all helping each other out.
All right. So now, about right before the election, I decided I'm going to interview a Republican. I'm going to interview a Democrat. And then I'm going to interview somebody from the third party. And I didn't look down on them. I didn't talk down on them. I just wanted to know honestly what they stood for. And for me, I stood more for the third party. I was more aligned with, because it was more common sense. We need to get back to common sense in this country. If I, as a business owner and as a person, cannot write checks for money I don't have in my account. Neither should my government be able to do that. And I believe also, like the gentleman that I talked to, I wish I could remember his name, but I can't. He says we should be more concerned with who is our sheriff, who is on our board of education, who is our mayor, who is our police chief. We should be more concerned with that than who our president is.
For sure, 100%.
So I think we agree on a lot of that stuff, correct?
Yeah, for sure.
So then, as a country, how do we start getting back to center?
We don't. It's not going to come back to center. Never in the history of our planet has a company that has the military adventurism that we have with a fiat currency, they've never bounced back. Never. There's been over 800 of those examples, and they've never bounced back. So it's not going to happen. And I think that's important for people to understand, is that there's a major breakdown coming. And of course, from every breakdown, there's usually a higher level of complexity and organization and communication that comes from that. It's part of Isla Prigogine's work in dissipative structure. But anybody who thinks that America is going to turn itself around is totally wrong. Probably before that happens, we're going to see an emergence of AI, quantum computing, 3D printing, weaponized drones, and a bunch of other stuff that are going to come in and fuck everything up. If not that, then it's going to be a global pandemic, or it's going to be a food shortage that's created, or a global economic breakdown, or the great financial reset, or environmental stuff. Who knows? Magnetic pole shifting. Who knows? But one thing that is not going to happen is that people in the United States are waking up and deciding to pull up their moral boots and getting to work and getting down and dirty and taking the hard road that it would take, which I would do. But I know I'm a very, very, very different type of a person who's willing to do a lot of work for a quality gain. That's not our culture. It's just not. And it's only getting worse. It's just getting worse.
All right. So then I have a question. I didn't know we were going to go here, but because you mentioned AI. I'm a big AI guy, and I love learning. In the States, there's a new product out there called OpenAI, which is ChatGPT, which was started by Elon years ago. And a lot of people are saying it's going to put us out of business. It's going to, do this. It's going to do that. Now, full disclosure, I love ChatGPT. I am working with it, but I hear a lot of people say, how do I defeat it? How do I go against it? Instead of saying, how can I work with AI to make my business better? I'm using it as a positive, where everybody else is using it as a negative, and it's the death row, it's the death knell. I just think you don't know how to run your business, so you're just using it as an excuse that AI is putting you out of business. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we use it too. We have a law firm here in the Dominican. My wife's an attorney. She's worked for the last 2 presidents investigating corruption in the country. And right now, we can put together legal documents in seconds using ChatGPT that would have taken hours in the past. So certainly, those people who are out there that are fear-based are probably going to feel the effects of this. And the people who are utilizing it are going to also feel the effects, but in the positive side. I also believe, though, I was working on AI when I was about 15 years old. It's one of the things, if my parents would have paid attention to what I was doing. I was working with a TRS-80 and trying to write programs using BASIC with for-next loops and if-then statements and the syntax all lined up properly to try to get a computer to learn from the mistakes it was making in the games that I was creating. So I'm super familiar with AI as well. And I think that one of the things that's really important right now as AI is evolving is asking it the right questions, getting it to move in the direction where it's self-reflective and moving towards a better world, and not having a bunch of ding-dongs that are out there asking it stupid questions like, hey, what's the quickest way to blow up a city or whatever, which is something I'm a little bit concerned about because, again, humanity's just proving it's very, very, very self-destructive. We're the only creature on the planet that's killing the host.
Well, but then, also, because somebody asked me, well, what do you think about ChatGPT? And I said, I am learning so much. I mean, I actually go on, if I knew we were going to have a talk today. So I actually looked up some of the keywords that we were going to be talking about today. So I actually use it as a learning tool, not just as a using tool. Okay, so my last couple questions is there. Most guys or girls when we get out of the army, honestly, we're pretty much fucked when we get out, mentally, physically. So, what are some of the a couple, say three things that we can do to start getting healthier physically, mentally, what are some things we can actually use to get healthy?
Well, 100% I'm going to say take my program. It's the most powerful program out there ever in the history of the world, and that'll prove itself soon enough. We just launched a couple months ago. That's why no one's heard of it yet. And second, I would say Vipassana. Vipassana is the teachings from the Buddha. It teaches how to tap into the sensations inside of the body, and it's incredible. The work that's done in Vipassana has been hijacked by many people in the industry. I'm not going to name names, but almost every single person that you know in the industry is using aspects of it in their longer seminars and so forth in order to get the same type of gains, but not nearly as good. So I would say Vipassana, autobiographical feedback, and then really strongly considering moving towards their epic journey, their messianic voyage, their hero's journey, their epic life, whatever you want to call it, because each one of us inside of us has the seed of greatness. We're born with it, just like a caterpillar has the blueprint of a butterfly. Yet we're so distracted by the 6,000 thoughts we have from our past and all the algorithms, agendas, and narratives and stuff that are out there by the elitists trying to buy our mind, the time of our mind, that we forget that we actually came here with the seed of a dream within. So I think those three things are super important. Quiet the mind with Vipassana, reprogram the mind with autobiographical feedback, and use both of those to head towards the life you were born to live and become the person you're here to be.
And I love that. Now I want to say something about that because I have found, you're like my 610th interview or something like that. I found that when a person gets out of the military, or say if they're a law enforcement officer, when they take the uniform off, or an athlete when they take the uniform off, a lot of us, when we get out, we no longer have a purpose. We no longer have a mission, and we no longer have camaraderie. And that oftentimes leads to suicide. But I find that if somebody finds their hero's journey, if somebody finds a mission bigger than themselves, they're much less likely to take their own lives. So yeah. I totally agree with what you're saying. And also down in, I don't know, you said you're not a big football guy, but in the States, there's a football player, Aaron Rodgers, plays for the Green Bay Packers. He said he's taken 4 days. He's going to go sit in a room in darkness for 4 days in silence to get his mind right. And so many people are making fun of him, but I think that's totally amazing that he's willing to talk about it.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. More and more people are learning about Vipassana. It's free. It's been around for 2,500 years. It was just recently discovered again, and they're teaching it in the pristine Pali text that the Buddha taught exactly. I've done about 20 of them. They're 10 days in silence each time. And I've done about 20 of them in 4 different countries. My wife and I have done 2 in the last year and a half. We're getting ready to do another one. And hey, I mean, what more do you want than to get super clear about who you are and why you're here and what's important to you and getting all that crap out of your mind, all this programming and stinking thinking that we got. So it's a great reason.
Last question is, how do we get your course? How do we find you, and how can we support your mission?
Sure. Go to IamTheMatrix.com because you are the matrix. You are the cause of everything. You are the cure for everything because you are everything. IamTheMatrix.com and sign up for the Great Spiritual Reset. It's a 3-part series. It's phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Brother, I'm so grateful that we finally got a chance to get together. I know it's been a long time coming, but I appreciate you. And guys, as you see the t-shirt that I always wear, it's not because I don't have any more t-shirts, but my mantra is today I decide. Those are the 3 most important words in the English language. You can either decide to be a victor or a victim. So please make the right decision today. And if you're looking to get your mind right, make sure you check out the I Am the Matrix. It'll change your life. I know I'm going to get my copy because anything I can do to get better, that's what I'm looking at. I'm 53 and I'm getting better every day instead of getting older. Brother, thank you so much, and I'm so grateful for you. And tell your bride, thank you so much for letting us have your time today.
Thanks, bro. Yeah.
All right, guys, I'm going to head out. I will talk to you tomorrow. I get to go pick up my daughter from school. Remember, the words I said is I get to, not I have to. I love you guys, and I'll check you guys out tomorrow. And remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is but up. Have an amazing week, brother.
You too. Thank you.